Hello and welcome back to yet another ILO breakdown, where the only thing breaking down is my sanity and the time between each video upload. So sadly, after 4 months or so, it has come to my intention that I should probably make an adjustment video to my previous lore video called What is the Dibble Lore Video Hiding? AKA, Where the Fuck is GW_F5? If you haven't seen that video already, I recommend not talking to your local practitioner or mental care health centre. You'll do just fine. If you have watched it, please go and check into the aforementioned, they have been waiting. But on a serious note, I do recommend having a watch as I won't be heavily addressing the two things mentioned within the video. That is the video name / title in lore and GW_F5. And just a note, that video and this video are centered around the Isle's recent file recovery video on YouTube. However, if you're not bothered to learn only two things in 20 minutes, I'll quickly sum up my video for you. We have no idea what the name means, that is USGX 9921C578. And we have no idea where GW_F5, a grid location, and the supposed location of the camera footage actually is. And now getting that out of the way, it is time for a proper analysis. One that doesn't just spend 20 minutes on only two top points. In this video, we'll be going over generally every minor and major question that one may have when watching the Isle's file recovery lore video. So sit back and move your dinosaur into a bush. And enjoy. Hopefully. Imagining this video as a part 2 or B version of my last proper ILO breakdown, I want to quickly address an interesting theory / idea that some have given me about a potential meaning and or location for GW_F5 within the video, where, put nicely by Midkill, a fellow member of the unofficial ILO Discord, watch GW_F5 be a guts tunnel that was used to transport the video. The theory / idea is nice and could potentially make sense. However, there are a few problems with the idea itself once you look outside of the Dibble Trail video / file recovery. But what in the world is guts, you might ask? If you don't know already, it is an upcoming underground tunnel system, sort of like a labyrinth within Gateway, and potentially in other islands but we're yet to know. Primarily comprised of tunnels but contains some buildings as well. One such type of buildings / areas that'll be within guts are called hubs. These hubs generally contain a lot of administrative information. Now the theory itself is pretty self-explanatory, meaning the grid location of the letterbox / black bar of the video footage, GW_F5, is just underground. And if it was logged in a guts hub, that could make a lot of sense. And we cannot say for certain that the grid data directly correlates with the actual live footage of the trail cameras. The biggest problem is that this doesn't really make sense in the context of this trail camera video, especially if you look at the Augustus video, which has a grid location GW_H4, which uses the same catalog system as the Dibble video, that being GW_number and letter. The Augustus video also refers back to the cameras and camera system that was part of the area that is GW_H4. Then again, the Augustus video has its own problems that will go greater in detail on another day. Simply put, we cannot technically find GW_H4. That is the building / facility that shows up in the footage. We can only relatively match the environment, but some of the things just don't line up properly. And we know that it isn't GW_H6, as it already exists before Gateway's official release. This doesn't invalidate that the Augustus video still infers and practically states H4's existence as the place of footage, just that the video itself has its own problems. And that being said, on the other hand, we know that the actual location of the footage in the Dibble video, as said in my last breakdown, is nowhere near the physical GW_F5 location. This is unlike the Augustus video, which claims to be in the general location of GW_H4, even though we cannot find it right now. So is GW_F5 on purpose? Technically, yes, somehow. But how and where? Who knows? Underground fits, even though I'd imagine there is a separate naming system that doesn't use GW, but it could still work. But now, onto the very core of the file recovery video, the very point of it all, that being injections. If you are familiar with any bit of legacy unofficial servers, you may have heard of that word before here and there. If you remember what injections were, don't. Forget about it just for this video. If you don't know, that is good. Albeit, the idea of both lore injections and legacy injections are similar. That is only because the name is pretty specific. That is, an instance of injecting or being injected, where legacy's injections were when admins would replace in the server configuration file your dinosaur with another dinosaur, in most cases a sandbox dinosaur like a Spinosaurus. Of course, you can't have this idea as a lore premise, as it doesn't really make much sense, hence why legacy injections are not related to this. But then what is it, you might ask? For the most part, we have to work off visual context clues and potentially even estimations and suggestions, therefore theory work. So let's break it down. We know that this is a second injection of sorts, which is referred to as injection #002, which is then followed by Diabloceratops version 0.1.2, more in that specific observation later. But we are given a map of Gateway. Again, we'll talk about the map later, which contains several, approximately 10 neon green circles that dance across the map, which, if you splice them all together, creates a sort of timeline of events. These events, at least, are the circles moving in a direction. We also learn that such footage is or was being used for behaviour and migration documentation. This information alone is quite an explanatory of what the heck is going on, to some degree. Apollo Engineering has or had been, at least with Dibbles, injecting a family or batch of genetically engineered animals into the ecosystem of Gateway. These animals migrate, move around, interact with a foreign location, and all AE would generally do is just observe. It is a similar idea to what we've seen in the dinosaur dossiers where X dinosaur or dinosaurs are doing Y activity, meanwhile a human, presumably a generation 2, observes from afar. But now, we have a bit of a problem. What does injection 2, that being the second injection, actually infer? That being, what does injection 2 mean? I won't go on too much about this, but I've theorized about 4 potential outcomes/options. All of them are relatively simple, with each of their own ups and downs. Number 1, quite literally the second injection to occur on Gateway. It could be this theory, as it never particularly states in any of the slides that this is Diabloceratops injection 2. Just injection 2. Then, line below it contains Diabloceratops version 0.1.2. Subtitles aren't the title, and even though sometimes you may say the whole title with the subtitle, injection 2 being the title in this case, this doesn't mean that the title equals the subtitle and vice versa. Although it does seem quite odd that on Gateway, this is the second injection, and we see at least 4 species in the video. So, where did the third and fourth come from at least? Theory number 2. The second option is that injection 2 is about it being the second injection of Dibbles of all time, hence 0.1.2. This is a lot stronger in my opinion than option 1, as it allows there to be more dinosaurs to exist via injection. However, I strongly stress that we don't know if injection equals to or is akin to replication. Does replication, an act we don't really understand yet, take place only on Gateway with no need for injection? Saying that, where do these injection creatures come from? An external AE site or source? Maybe from within Gateway itself, like the atrium/perimeter, which is the big dome. We don't really know. Theory number 3, the third option, is that the second injection is about this being the second injection of 0.1.2. All of these options, in the terms of semantics, could make sense. But I believe this is certainly more likely than option 1. But I'm certainly 50-50 between theory number 2 and theory number 3. But why? Funnily enough, we were told within the video, showed the actual genome of this particular batch of Diabloceratops. Sadly, I don't work with biology in real life, so I personally don't understand the lingo. However, after discussions with others in the official Discord a few months ago, we concluded that the label of F36 refers to generations. Therefore, we have 36 generations of dibbles in human lifetimes, about 1,000 years worth of genetic mixing in the sorts, that equate to the specific batch of dinosaurs, which seemingly have been made ready for their second official injection into an environment, where potentially several generations prior, maybe 7, 14, 20, who knows, there had been the first injection, which most likely died via unsustainability in the environment, pretending I know the official terms for such. Now, I assume that the 36 generations only refer to 36 generations of Dibble version 0.1.2, but I could be wrong. We don't label normal creatures with version numbers, so 0.1.2 could potentially be the 20th generation or the 12th generation, which succeeded in just enough genetic change that AE deemed it worthy of the new number 0.1.2 from 0.1.1. Again, we don't know. And that doesn't truly align with the thinking of option 3, could be quite general. Theory number 4, the last and final option, which theorizes that no, this isn't the second injection of version 0.1.2, but actually of the F36 genome/generation itself. The final option suggests a very fast-paced work environment for Apollo engineering. Going through 36 generations wouldn't be all that quick. So, if this option is true, then it would mean AE must churn out each genome once ready and inject them immediately. AE must therefore quickly find out over a few days if whatever the current generation is, say F13, if it is sustainable in the ecosystem, and therefore can migrate in time to find its dietary needs, while also have to successfully breed and fend from predators, etc. Of course, options 2 and 3 do represent a bit of speed from AE, but this final option sounds very hasty, and if this was the correct option, that would be a strong reason why Apollo engineering has little to minimal control on Gateway, and likely other islands. It reminds me of a John Hammond situation, especially novel Hammond. Alas, that should be everything on the injection side of things, so feel free to give your opinions in the comments if you pick any of those 4 options, or if you have your own theory on what the injections mean. Now we have a few smaller things I'd like to discuss. First and foremost, Archive 7. What is it? Well, sometimes to go forward we have to go back a bit, that being to the 21st of August 2021 with the release of the video Field Observation Pachycephalosaurus on the Isle's official YouTube channel. Now, we do know that this and likely all the Spiro-situated trail cameras are not true canon anymore, but may be revised to better fit the current world of Everima's lore. But we're not here to break down and analyse this video for that purpose, not at all. All we need is the first 2 seconds of this video and a bit of general observation. Firstly, AE Core Data Archive R18, and secondly, the broken/glitched aesthetic of the video. Let's just talk about the second half first. It is quite simple. It is quite likely the Dibble video was inspired by this original video, but playing a lot heavier into the glitched aesthetic. We then also have the first half being AE Core Data Archive R18. AE Core is a relatively old topic now, with only one other mention prior to the Pachy video. That being in the Steam page of all places, which situates AE Core in a very awkward position, as it comes from the 2019 period of the Isle, which mentions AE Core TX. However, back then, and into 2021, a lot was going on with Recode. Moving into Everima heavily shoved the Isle's lore around, moving, removing, and changing many things as discussed in my introduction in the Isle lore video. So, AE Core, itself as a name, may be dead, but the idea of AE Core seems to still exist somewhat, that being through Archive 7. Anyways, the video itself is split into two parts, the first containing the intro, and a conclusion, technically, plus the IO logo, but we'll ignore that for lore's sake, which addresses AE Core. We see the second part of the video, which is in an AVI format being sequenced. Then it plays. This shows a cameraman being hit by a Paki. The end. What is interesting though is, why? Why is this section of the video, the section that would theoretically be run on a computer, i.e. not the second section of the video, be glitching? And honestly, I think it is related to what we theorized in my last breakdown video about Archive 7, that there is something greater going on than just something being hit by a Paki, or in the Dibble video, the original footage was attacked, which likely caused some corruption. As, like the Paki video, the Dibble video contains two separate videos in one. The corrupted footage, and an opening statement that refers to the corrupted footage being corrupted. It certainly seems like Dondi, for years now, has bigger ideas and events/issues within the internal mechanisms of Apollo engineering itself. But sure, the Paki video is way more cinematically edited than the trail camera, but I believe that AE Core has, relatively, been rebranded to Archive 7, or at least a larger archive where Archive 7 is more notably named. Because look, rather than branding everything you use with your name, why not make it a bit more convenient? Do you label all your plates in the house with your name despite only you living in there? But okay. We do know Dondi wants propaganda posters, but we also know he still doesn't want to label every model with AE or Apollo engineering. This isn't a dystopian city. Sure, it might be abandoned to some extent, but that doesn't equate dystopian. Therefore, we don't need needless branding adverts everywhere. Now, I know this didn't answer or try to answer what Archive 7 was or is, so I'll give you what the video tells us. Archive 7 likely doesn't just contain AVI, aka video files, nor any other type of video file. We know this as one of the slides given contains information that annotations and unaltered footage remain there. Saying that though, Archive 7 must be massive to even just simply contain unaltered footage. Unaltered means raw, and quite likely, truly unedited data. This data may not even be compressed like a YouTube video. Heck, imagine recording your local city skyline for the whole day for a time-lapse, where time-lapses capture images at a very slow interval, every minute or so basically. Now, imagine instead of that, it takes 30 or 60 photos per second for several days. This would likely equate to tons of gigabytes of data per take, hour, etc. that would have to be sent via a wireless connection to the nearest receiver. Archive 7 is a mysterious entity. It makes me wonder if the replicator is or has been connected to it. And if it is connected to it, what else can it connect to? Maybe that's why it seems corrupted or has some sort of double corrupted recovery videos. Who knows? Up next we have something smaller. At 5:28 in the morning, a wandering Diabloceratops accidentally bumped against trail camera 1393, which, therefore, all footage following that day had appeared slanted on a right-leaning direction. Luckily, footage of the nesting Diablos was taken and used. However, likely throughout the day, footage sent back via wireless was observed by whomever the employee or entity tasked with surveillance of this trail camera was. Then at 4:34 in the morning, the following day, an unknown person, either the same character mentioned previously, or someone ordered by whom, had arrived in the middle of dark and replaced TCAM 1393 with TCAM 1462. Presumably, the original TCAM may have been broken by the herbivore or taken back for inspection. The thing that I'm curious about is whom that character was, the physical person who came up for a split second. Taking a closer look, this humanoid/human character is the same model that we have in game for Generation 2s, aka synthetically created humans. Same hat, same shirt, same face, and even the same badge logo on his shoulder. Side note, I am actually curious if that logo is actual lore or not. It is nothing like Apollo Engineering's AE logo, besides the colour scheme, and it's only kind of similar to the C/D logo, but that's a subject for another conversation in the future. I digress, and as you can see, it practically and basically is the Gen 2 model. But is it in lore? Painfully again, such questions are never easy. A hint given by Dondi alluded to the idea of why couldn't Generation 2s also be Apollo Engineering employees? But if it is true that Gen 2s can be employees as well, where does it place the Diabloceratops trail camera video in lore on the timeline? Not only that, but it could change the way we see Gen 2s. Do they abide under non-synthetic humans, or are they mutually respected? Who knows? But then, what about when we play? Why are the only two playable options Gen 1 and Gen 2s, and not also normal humans? And what if this video doesn't take place in that period? The ramifications could be quite something. Now, it is only fair for the sanity of you, if you watched everything up till here, that I no longer go on huge rants or anything alike. And also I need to keep this video shorter, so therefore I will present to you several shorter paragraph dot points of observations and the like from the video. Firstly, the glitch slides. These were very frequent throughout the video and were typically used as transitions into new scenes. These slides though contain heaps of really interesting insights into how Apollo Engineering works on a more scientific sci-fi level. One such example is the botanical side of things. We now know that AE utilizes CRISPR, a gene editing tool, to genetically modify, at the very least, diet plants like Anacardium occidentale, which are cashews, and Citrus sinensis, which are oranges. This nicely shows us that even though AE's roots were in botany, they never stopped once they made dinosaurs. Which makes sense. They would have several years of data and information on plants. Therefore, if AE wants to make some sort of ecosystem, which we can kinda infer from these slides and the idea of testing and integrating a modified batch of dibbles into an environment, they would need to understand the plant side of things as well to properly balance this ecosystem. We also have more related slides relating to Diabloceratops, especially this specific injection. Worthwhile to note that the borders of these recreated images are inspired by the Augustus Media Player slides. We don't really know if this is what it would actually look like without the artifacting. Alas, these slides do give a bit more insight into the injection himself, being that this injection, more so the data taken from the satellite imagery and other materials, was submitted to an archive, presumably 7, for an AE field guide. Hopefully it could be something put into the game itself in the main menu to help out new players. However, lore-wise, it's nothing really to mention upon. Besides, Tartarus. No comments can be given, but it was found by Rumpelstiltskin, a very interesting thing to place in this video. Perhaps it could be the same threat as the Augustus video. Maybe, but from what we can see, it does not really look like the Tartarus threat in Augustus. So, is it about the dibbles being put into Tartarus? If so, it might be further evidence, like we hear about the additional replicants of Augustus, that Tartarus is less like its legacy counterpart. Less high class in terms of working with specimens like the Matriarch or the 12 Reapers, and more so general, which may mean that this is more of a prison than we may originally guessed. But we are working with one word, so nothing is confirmed yet. Now onto something suggested by the Serato, that being, what happened to the trail camera? In this case, we have 2 trail cameras we can talk about. Starting with the first, of course, this bit is a lot simpler. An unknown employee likely came, took and replaced the first TCAM, TCAM 1393, with TCAM 1462 after it had been hit. However, later on in that video, we see that the second TCAM also gets hit by a much larger creature. The main question here is, what happened to that creature? Which then brings me to something really cool that Dondi and the devs put in the game. That camera, TCAM 1462. Right now, or After this video, if you choose, head over to File Recovery USGX9921C578 on YouTube and look at the description. // IL file retrieved from Archive 7. Recovery options for source material is ongoing. And what can we take from that? This video description likely transcribes some sort of statement sent, made, faxed, etc., which had been internally made in referring to the specific moment. That is, the Dibble TCAM video itself. For whatever reason, no one picked up or found this camera. Although, of course, we have to note that we don't know the timeline of the statement from when the camera was knocked over. But I do find it interesting though, that whatever period between the video where I'm certain it wouldn't have been corrupted, being put into Archive 7, and then retrieved from Archive 7, where it was then corrupted via X reason or reasons, that they kinda just, seemingly, forgot about the second TCAM. Supposedly once they found out about the first camera being knocked over, this was mid-research of Injection 2's batch of Dibbles. However, just before TCAM number 2, the Dibbles were attacked by Omniraptors, a Dibble died, and several other Dibbles ran away. More than 24 hours later, we can see the Dibble body all by itself with some compies. Therefore, the prime camera location that the first TCAM had was no longer any help, being that the site was a nesting site for these Dibbles. The second TCAM had no more purpose and was, quite likely by the looks of it, forgotten about for some time. Then it was knocked over. End of video. That is, unless you are part of a little niche section of the community, that being the IO Law community, which had been given a hint by Dondi. The reason we had help was likely because we practically ignored the video description, as this description was the key to something hidden, the camera, TCAM 1462. And long story short, this led to weeks of campaigning of us trying to find something law related, as Dondi didn't tell us what it was. This was until some members realised that, why don't we look at the most recent law video? And although they had mostly ignored the description, they realised that we know F5 doesn't exist as a location. Didn't match with where it was on the grid map. So, they went to the same spot and found the camera lying in the grass in the body/base a few paces away. Etched on the camera was a video code for YouTube to a channel called GW_F5 that sent you to a YouTube video called USGX9921C578, and in brackets, B. And what did we learn about this mysterious video? Nothing, besides the mighty Allosaurus knocks over a TCAM. But the description? USGX9921C578 B IL. Recovery operations for source material complete. File archived. Therefore, this scavenger hunt for a mysterious law object, the trail camera, was complete and done. This recovery operation, what we like to call the law hunt, was over. Currently that model no longer exists in the game, neither in the files nor the world itself. But what does the law hunt mean for law? It certainly allowed some fun and interactive and engaging sessions with law enthusiasts. But what does it mean for law? Does this mean, canonically, that we found the camera? Where does this place us in the timeline? Because surely that camera could not have been kept there for years, waiting for someone to pick it up. Of course, our actions do not need to correlate truly with the IR law. Definitely. It was a fun event where it merely got us to imagine trying to find it, as if we were humans or Generation 2s recovering a bunch of lost objects under the orders of Apollo Engineering. Alas, that should be all for the Diabloceratops trail camera video. Hopefully. But, what did we learn? Yeah, what did we learn? Well, GW_F5 could be underground, but that's just a rough theory. Apollo Engineering are, or at least was, still engaged with bioengineering plant life while making dinosaurs. Gen 2s could also be workers, maybe. Tartarus mention is always nice. Oh, and Quetz was also supposed to have an audio cameo as well, which I forgot to mention. However, that's about it. If you have any questions about this video, the last video, or any official IL Law videos, I'm free to answer. If you have any questions about this video, the last video, or any official IL Law video or content, I'm free to answer any. If you have any theories, feel free to give them in the comments, or if you want to join the unofficial Isle Lore Discord, which is run by a few active Isle Lore lovers. And that's it. Thank you, and good night. It was a pleasure.